And I'd like for us all to welcome Colette.
Welcome.
Gauvreau. Did I butcher it or did I do okay?
No, that's pretty good.
Okay. Has been exploring and enjoying the benefits of the mind-body connection for 30 years. Her personal exploration of yoga led her to complete yoga teacher training during 2003 to 2004 after the birth of her second child. She is a certified coach and practitioner of evolved neurolinguistic programming, ENLP, the quantum time release process, quantum change process, and hypnotherapy. Colette works specifically with people suffering from chronic conditions, and she is here tonight to impart her wisdom to us. So with no further ado, I'm going to pin Colette and mute myself.
Thank you so very much. And thank you, ladies, all for being here tonight. I want to acknowledge your time and energy just being here, because I recognize how busy everyone's lives are these days. And we spend an enormous amount of time in front of technology and screens. And so thank you for taking a little bit more of that time in front of the screen to be with me here tonight. I appreciate it very much. As Tracy mentioned, I've been curious about the mind-body connection for many, many years. I guess I was drawn to this in my younger years because I suffered from some anxiety. Depression would come in and out a little bit, and I was looking for ways to manage that. And so this is how I found my way to yoga. And it's been my experience with yoga specifically, what I found to be so beneficial is connecting to the breath was something that I really found a lot of relief. And I find it's a very powerful tool for managing stress and managing our health. And so that is what I'd love to talk to you about today, is using our breath as a tool to manage stress for the purpose of being healthy and happy and really being able to enjoy our life fully. I work a lot with the unconscious mind, which is where the evolved neurolinguistic programming sort of comes into play. And a lot of that is a lot of letters, but what it really means is that I work with the unconscious mind, or subconscious mind as it's sometimes called. And so from the neck up, let's say, would be our conscious mind, and from the neck down is our unconscious mind. And our unconscious mind is very powerful and is what really runs our system and takes care of all of our bodily functions. So we don't have to consciously instruct ourselves to breathe or to digest our food or to, pump our blood through the system. There's a wonderful intelligence within us. But interestingly enough, the breath is the only bodily function that, while it is managed by our subconscious, it can also be manipulated by our conscious mind. And so that piece is really what I think is the key to what connects the conscious and the unconscious mind. And why do we want to do that? Well, we want to do that because when we have a really strong connection between our mind and our body, we are in better communication with ourselves. It's like becoming in a really good relationship with yourself, becoming your own best friend. And as I mentioned, the body has such a wonderful internal system, intelligence. And when we connect to our breath and quiet our mind, this yada yada chatter that goes on all the time and that is often very critical, when we can focus on the breath as a way of clearing the mind and connecting to our breath, we become really in good rapport with ourselves. We become really good friends with ourselves, and we tap into that internal wisdom, right? So this is sort of why we do what we do, meditation and all of that things. I mean, everybody really talks about it a lot and how helpful it is. But what I found sometimes as well is that the word meditation can be a bit intimidating. I don't know if I have any Disney fans here, but I think of Rafiki from Lion King, and this sort of really Zen master. And to me, even still, that seems a bit intimidating, which is why I often call myself a breath coach or things like that. And the reason is because I want to make it accessible to you. I feel like it would be a real shame for somebody not to try breath work because they felt like it had to be something, a big practice like that. So what I found through my yoga teacher training and the specific training that I did was Esther Myers is where I trained, and her teacher was Vonda Scarvelli. And their connection was that when we connect to the force of gravity at the same time as having breath awareness, that there's a third thing that happens, and that's a lengthening in the spine. Now, we may or may not feel that lengthening in the spine, depending on how aware you are of your own internal systems, but that's sort of the goal. That's the basis that I sort of really clung to. And so you can use, obviously, yoga on the mat, you do your stretches, but what I found really beneficial was just incorporating that breath awareness into my day-to-day life. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning, we're all really busy. And so sometimes you think, oh, I should, but I don't have the time to go do a whole yoga practice or to go sit. And what I discovered was I was just taking myself out of the game. That's the self-sabotaging mind. And so I committed to myself. And at the time, Tracy mentioned my son had just been born. So I had a newborn and a toddler. So yeah, as if I'm just going to sit on a mat and breathe. So what I discovered is that if I just found little snippets in my day for 2 or 3 breaths, whenever I could, and the more frequently I could, the better, that the benefits were just as wonderful as sitting for 15 or 20 minutes on a meditation mat. And so that's what I started doing. And to incorporate the effect of the grounding, and I hope you all know what I mean by that, but it's a sense gravity exists, right? It's why this pen will drop instead of floating up, right? So our bodies are constantly being drawn down to the earth and supported by the earth beneath us. So what I did was I just incorporated a toe wiggle. And you can all do that right now if you want, just wiggling your toes. And what it does, it's such a simple thing, but what it does is it immediately takes you out of your head and into your body, and not only into your body, but all the way down to your toes. And our brain is so magnificent that we may not consciously realize it, but doing that, the body is scanning, the mind is scanning the whole body as it goes down. And then your attention will quickly jump back up and out to what's going on. But just taking that snippet of drawing your attention into your own body and all the way down, and then we take a few breaths. And I don't really have a name for this. I just call it Colette's little breathing technique. But this is all I do. I wiggle my toes and I inhale and exhale and let my shoulders drop away. And really allow the exhalation, and then inhale again. And you want to clear the mind of any clutter and exhale completely. And then just one last breath, just comfortably. So that probably took all of 20, 30 seconds, right? Simple, simple, simple. So that's the first step, is just understanding that consciously being aware of our breathing is enough. It's a great place to start, a really great place to start. And then the wiggling the toes, that's going to increase the benefit of the breathing. And the clearing of the mind and allowing the shoulders to drop, right? So those are the key elements of sort of my breathing technique. But what I really want to impart to you is be curious. Be curious. There might be something else that connects for you. Another thing that I want to mention about the breathing that I did, and I think is a great tip for people who want to start to incorporate breath awareness as a tool, is to associate times, specific times during the day. We all have many, many times where we're alone with our thoughts. And what are you thinking during that time, right? This is the unconscious mind is always rolling, and it's often rolling our to-do list, our worries, our concerns, and that type of thing. And when we interestingly, our mind doesn't recognize the difference between reality and a thought. So if you're running your to-do list and your stress list all the time, you're actually inducing stress in your body when it may not actually be present in this moment. And that doesn't do your body any benefits. So what I did to sort of remind myself to breathe consciously was, I thought, what is something that I do constantly that can be a reminder for me? So it's simple answer would be to grab your phone and set 2 or 3 timers, right? But I wanted a little bit more than that. So I said to myself, what if every time my hands touch water, that would be my cue? And having a toddler and another one in diapers, I had my hands in water a lot. And that was that cue to me. Okay, well, if I'm here washing my hands, I have that moment where nothing else is going on. Let's wiggle the toes, come back to the breath, and just allow gravity to drain my stress and worries out of my body through my feet. Right? So visualization is another thing that I do on particularly stressful days. I visualize it sometimes as black tar, and that's to give me the sense that it's really releasing. I also want to remind us all that the exhalation is a release of carbon dioxide, right? We bring in oxygen, our body takes it through our system, delivers that oxygen to our cells, billions of cells, and then in its brilliance also grabs the waste product and then releases it into the air, which happens to be the perfect thing that our plants need, right? And so it cycles back and forth. And this is, the wonderful thing about breath work. It brings us into ourselves while connecting us to everything outside of ourselves as well, which I think is just fantastic, right? Mother Nature is incredible. I'm going to give you a couple more ideas and things to ponder. One thing that I also found really, really helpful for me is the analogy of our body being similar to our technology. So we all have cell phones, right? We know that. So the hardware, the actual hard phone itself, is comparable to our physical body, our bones and our skin and the sort of structure of ourselves. The unconscious mind acts as the operating system. So the Macintosh or the Windows operating system that allows you to even fire up the phone and put anything on it. The apps that we put on our phone, they're like our individual experiences, things that have happened to us. So my experiences are unique to me and yours will be unique to you, just like the apps that I load on my phone will be different from yours. But what good is any of that if you don't have the charger? Completely useless, right? Completely. So that's our breath. That's our breath. It's our food as well, but you can live for quite a while without food, not so much breath, right? So if your toddler tries to have a temper tantrum and hold their breath, you can rest assured that they might pass out, but the body will override that. It will override it because, again, in its infinite wisdom, it wants to preserve our life. So think about this breath work as your charger. Right? It's that oxygen mask on the plane. Like, we need the oxygen, and they instruct moms to put it on themselves first before helping their children, right? We can't help the others in our lives if we don't take care of ourselves. And that's really, really seems so simple. And it took me until I was in my late 40s to figure out a lot of this stuff. And so this is why I share. I didn't really share much about my own illnesses, though. I work with people who have chronic conditions because I have had various conditions over the course of my life. I had anxiety as a child. I was nervous about a lot of things, didn't like competing in team sports, made me anxious. But I also had things like IBS which still is something that I have to really manage, and watch myself. And so there's a lot of things around food that, I didn't eat vegetables growing up. I did a lot of damage in my earlier years. And then when I figured it out, I had to reverse it. So the breath work and yoga was very helpful at my stress and anxiety. The evolved and neurolinguistic stuff, the quantum tools that helped me deal with the unconscious mind and some of the beliefs and limiting beliefs that I had there that were preventing me from moving beyond my different illnesses. Things like healthy food isn't as much fun as unhealthy food. It doesn't make me feel as happy. I just don't like it. Just don't like it is what I used to say as I suffered in agony, when I had a choice of what to put in my mouth. So I used a lot of hypnotherapy to overcome that, to retrain my mind to be in alignment with what is actually best for me. So we sometimes beat ourselves up over not having enough willpower. Willpower lives in the 10%. What good is 10% going to do against 90%? If 90% of me believes that my life will be miserable without Miss Vicky's, I'm not going to get to where I'm going. And that was one of my big issues, chips. And it was terrible for my stomach. So I still eat them sometimes now in much smaller quantities, but I recognize and appreciate, and my unconscious mind is now in alignment with the fact that if I do one simple thing and drink a green smoothie every single morning, my whole world is a whole lot different. And it's so simple, and it takes me about 10 minutes. Some pineapples, some spinach, some chia seeds, I'm good to go. And when I think about that now, I think it's so silly that I didn't do that all those years, and I talked myself out of those things. So I'm not sure how long you wanted me to go on, Tracy, and I know you want to leave some time for questions as well. I could go on about this stuff forever. So I'm happy to keep going if you want me to, but I want to be mindful again of our time, and if you want to do any Q&A.
Do you want, is there you told us about this practice, and we did do a tiny bit of breathing. And so I feel like we had talked about something experiential, so we covered it. So I guess we can, if you have another little thing like that, otherwise questions is fine.
I have a couple of things. I mean, wiggling your toes, taking 2 or 3 breaths, clearing the mind, definitely. That is sort of my thing. But there's many, many different breathing practices that you can do. As I say, just bringing awareness is a good piece. The other thing is simply by extending our exhalation, just really, really emptying out, tends to have the effect of a really big inhale after. And so much of our society is very shallow breathing. We're not really breathing fully. And so we're not oxygenating our bodies fully, so that would be another suggestion that I would have. And I can also, if you want, if there's not a lot of questions, I have a meditation that I sort of could read you through, and you guys could just listen, and I could take you through that as well. So lots of ways we could go.
Does anyone have any questions for Colette?
Are you guys interested in doing just a little bit more of the breathing to get an experiential sense of that? Tidbit, it's about that whole fight or flight, right? So the unconscious mind's prime directive, one of the prime directives, is to preserve our body. And so when the body is in fight or flight, and I think we've all had the experience when you're totally stressed out, you're anxious, your shoulders are up here, and what's happening is your body is bracing itself for some sort of a fight. And when that happens, your body is not sending resources to your digestion, to healing and repairing anything in your system, because what's the point in digesting lunch if I'm being chased by a tornado, right? So what we have to recognize is that in our modern society, our stress is very different. We're not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or things like that. And it can be constant, and kind of we get used to it and comfortable, and our society rewards it. You feel like, oh, look at what I'm, there's some sort of badge of honor that we've come to associate with it, which is just really unhealthy. And when we come home and we replay the disaster stories, we're continuing that. So just to understand and recognize that that happens, and ask yourself, am I in a safe place right now? And a lot of people have a hard time quieting the mind. So I'm going to give you this idea. We're great at multitasking. Add another thing to your list. You can think about all the other stuff and think about your breathing, and notice what happens over, say, a week or two, because your body is going to be behind you in this journey of wellness. Your body wants to preserve you. And so when you start doing practices that are healthy, if you give it enough time and you pay attention to your body, you'll get the positive feedback, and you'll gain momentum. The other thing that I think is wonderful is things like this. When we gather as a group and we talk about it together and acknowledge it and share our different ideas, we don't feel alone, because hey, look at the last 2 years. I don't need to know anything else about you. I know you've been, we've all been really under a lot of different things over the last few years. And so it's important to acknowledge that we don't have to be everything to everybody, and that we should prioritize ourselves, right? It's about self-love. And as women, we are often, society's taught us to be caregivers, put everybody else before yourself. And I think it's time for that to change. We need to role model to our young women that our health and happiness is absolutely important and worthwhile. Why don't we wiggle around in our chairs a bit, and even just sort of lift your arms or move around a little bit, and then settle your body all the way into your toes. Think about an hourglass, right? And the sands trickling down, and just take a nice inhalation and exhale completely and comfortably, inhaling in your own time and exhale. Allow your worries to be released from your body. And another inhale. As you exhale, allow the face to soften, muscles around the eyes to relax, and your eyes resting as though they're in hammocks. Every inhalation brings energy and oxygen. Every exhalation has the capability to release tension, toxins, and negativity. And when you're ready, you can just move your body again and open your eyes whenever you're ready. Just sort of took you guys into that really impromptu, but I looked up at the time and I thought I want to give them another little taste of how wonderful it is and how quickly you can change your physiology, right? Just by adding that extra oxygen and giving your mind some space to just be quiet. Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Colette. That was wonderful. I'm so grateful that you were willing to come and talk to my people.
Yes, absolutely. And feel free to reach out to me by email. I know you have my social media. I'd love it if you followed me and chatted with me and interact with me on social media. That'd be great.
Yes, I'm going to copy it into the chat right now, but it'll also be in the replay email that I'm going to send to you. So you don't have to worry if you don't manage to copy it from the chat. Don't worry, I'll make sure that you get it. So
Absolutely.
Thank you
You're
so
very
much.
welcome. You're very, very welcome. And I'll be sure to share any upcoming programs and things, if that's okay with Tracy. If you're, and as I say, if you follow my social media, you'll get it there as well. But it was a pleasure to meet you all tonight.